Could there really be a civilization somewhere in the universe that uses magic? When we think of magic, the picture is usually pretty clear. Someone in a long robe grabs a little wooden stick, waves it around, and starts chanting words nobody understands, nobody can pronounce, and nobody could learn without damaging at least 3 brain cells. Then suddenly, boom. Fireball spell, lightning spell, mind-reading spell, time-stop spell, and maybe some highly questionable demon summoning spell that probably should not be allowed on a family-friendly platform. The problem is, from our point of view, none of this seems to have any real mechanism behind it. For people like us, loyal soldiers of common sense and basic physics, this is hard to accept. In our world, most things have explanations. An apple falls because of gravity. A boat floats because of buoyancy. Your shoes do not slide everywhere because of friction. And if your pants feel weird when you sit down, that is probably not a mysterious cosmic force. That is user error. The point is, behind every phenomenon, there should be some kind of principle. But in a magic world, things get ridiculous very quickly. Why can someone point a stick at another person, shout something that sounds like avocado cadabra, and the other person just immediately logs out of life? Is that reasonable? But let's open the top of our skulls for a moment and do some irresponsible brainstorming. Imagine there really is a place somewhere in the universe where the laws are completely different from ours. There is no physics as we know it, no familiar for fundamental forces, no standard rules that make our universe behave the way it does. Instead, the universe is filled with a kind of magical element that living bodies can absorb, store, and release. In that world, a person releasing fire, summoning lightning, moving rocks, or controlling the air would not be a miracle. It would be basic common sense. People there would grow up knowing that humans can cast spells, the same way we grow up knowing water flows downhill. So maybe the two worlds have different foundations, but their operating logic is actually similar. We use physical laws, they use magical laws. When you think about it that way, magic suddenly feels a little less insane. A student in a magic world chants a spell and releases a fireball. A student in our world writes down a formula and solves a math problem. And honestly, if you listen to someone talking about quadratic functions, trigonometry, and analytic geometry without understanding any of it, it also sounds like a curse from an ancient forbidden book. At that level, the difference may not be as big as we think. We think magic is fantasy. But people from a magic civilization would probably look at our technology and think we are the weird ones. For example, I can hold a tiny glowing rectangle, type a few mysterious symbols, and instantly watch someone dancing, cooking, gaming, or doing something deeply unnecessary on the other side of the planet. To a wizard, that is not a smartphone. That is a high-level remote viewing crystal. Then I tap the screen again, and 30 minutes later, food appears at my door. Is that not basically budget summoning magic? Magic cares about rituals. Science also cares about procedure. A wizard stands in the correct pose, chants the correct spell, injects 100 points of mana into a magic broom, and flies 30 kilometers. I take out my phone, scan a QR code, put 2 liters of gasoline into my car, and also travel 30 kilometers. One runs on mana, one runs on fuel. But at the end of the day, both are solving the same ancient problem. I do not want to walk. So a technological civilization and a magical civilization might be like Windows and Mac. Each has its own system. Each works perfectly well on the inside. They just cannot run each other's software. If a respected Grand Archmage came to our world and realized there was no magical energy in the air for him to absorb, then no matter how hard he waved his arms, spun in circles, and chanted dramatic nonsense, the final result might be weaker than a retired uncle doing morning exercise in the park. And if we traveled to a magic world and seriously tried to explain gravity, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics, they probably would not think we were scientific geniuses. They would probably think, this guy has no wand, but he is trying to explain the truth of the universe. That feels dangerous. Maybe burn him a little just to be safe. Of course, if magic itself can be observed, analyzed, researched, and broken down into smaller parts, then magic is basically another form of science. It just does not belong to our current theoretical system. We cannot explain it, but that does not mean it has no rules. So maybe we can put it like this: science is magic we already understand. Magic is science we have not figured out yet. Their principles may be completely different, but they can still produce very similar results. Think about it. A tiny box in your pocket can take photos, record videos, locate you on a map, translate languages, navigate roads, pay for coffee, and control the lights and air conditioning in your house. At what point does that stop being technology and start being wizardry with better branding? In some superhero stories, there's even a classic kind of scene where a tech genius builds a device that suppresses magic. A powerful witch shows up, he turns the machine on, and suddenly her powers stop working. Then the tech guy gives the most smug conclusion possible. See? Magic is just technology we have not reverse engineered yet. That is exactly the energy of a billionaire engineer looking at ancient mystical forces and thinking, interesting. I wonder if I can take that apart. And in many fantasy novels, magic is not something you can just randomly throw around whenever you feel like it. Just like science in our world, it has to be learned properly. Do not think flying on a broom and throwing fireballs is easy. Broom flying probably requires flight class. Fireballs require spell class. Potions require memorizing recipes. Alchemy requires understanding materials. Their potion studies are basically our medicine and chemistry. Their alchemy is basically our materials science and engineering. Students in our world suffer through years of exams, practice papers, and academic pain. Magic students probably have their own version, 5 years of spell casting, 3 years of chanting drills, and a final exam designed by someone who clearly hates children. The questions would probably sound like this: in an environment with 60% humidity, level 3 mana density, and a slightly cracked wand, how do you cast a fireball without burning off your own eyebrows? That is not magic anymore. That is homework. And the ranking system for wizards is actually pretty similar to our education system. A gray-robed wizard might be like someone with a college diploma. A white-robed wizard might be like a university graduate. A great wizard is probably graduate school level. And a grand archmage is basically an academic legend with a ridiculous amount of student debt. So, when a certain gray-robed wizard fights a demon, falls into the abyss, comes back reborn, and upgrades into a white-robed wizard, what is that really? That is not just a fantasy transformation. That is a man successfully completing his degree upgrade through self-study. And if people like Newton, Einstein, Maxwell, or Turing were placed into a magic world, they would not be ordinary scholars. They would be founding-level grand archmages. Newton walks in and says, "Every object attracts every other object." The wizards hear that and go, "What kind of large-scale control spell is this?" Then Einstein adds, "Time and space are not absolute." At that point, it is over. This is no longer a wizard. This is a walking universe update patch. People online love asking one question: if a technological civilization fought a magical civilization, who would win? Honestly, that question is kind of pointless. They do not even belong to the same rulebook. Who wins depends entirely on how the writer sets up the world. You say the magic side has an instant death curse. Fine, but if I am holding a desert eagle loaded with magnum rounds, I can only say to a certain noseless dark lord, "Your spell is not fast enough, and it is definitely not loud enough." You say the magic world has a cursed frost sword of doom. Okay, then if I carry a flamethrower, can I call it the blade of spicy happiness? You say you have large-scale forbidden magic. We also have intercontinental missiles, nuclear weapons, and a whole collection of things that sound like humanity should not have been trusted with them. You summon a meteor. I press a launch button. Congratulations, we have both discovered the industrial version of a god-killing spell. And if we keep exaggerating, it gets even crazier. You have a dimensional banishment spell. Fine, and I pull out a two-dimensional foil from a certain hard sci-fi nightmare, and now nobody gets to play anymore because the entire map has been flattened. So if you really want to compare which side is stronger, it mostly depends on who is allowed to make up the crazier rules. But one thing is pretty clear. If magic and technology are both ways of using the rules of the universe, then once a magical civilization develops far enough, it would probably follow a path similar to ours. On one side, they would explore the microscopic world and search for the true nature of magic. They might discover magical particles, mana fields, spell frequencies, elemental waves, and all kinds of things that sound fake until someone writes a textbook about them. Then they would develop magical quantum theory, elemental dynamics, spell engineering, and probably a new academic field whose only purpose is making students regret their life choices. Eventually, wizards would have to write research papers too. A title might be something like, "A Study on Energy Loss Models of Fireball Spells in Low Mana Environments." It sounds extremely magical. It also sounds exactly like a graduate student crying at 3 in the morning while fixing the citation format. On the other side, they would eventually look upward and move into space. We use rockets, engines, satellites, and space stations. They might use mana shields, teleportation circles, star navigation spells, and astral sailing. We study how to survive cosmic radiation. They study how to prevent wand connection failure in low mana outer space. We train astronauts. They train star mages. But in the end, the goal is the same: leave the ground and explore worlds beyond our own. We call it reaching for the stars. They might call it lighting the cosmos in the name of mana. So, could there really be a magical civilization somewhere in the universe? If the universe is big enough, and its rules are strange enough, maybe there really is a place where nature works in a way we cannot understand at all. To them, it would not be magic. It would just be science. But to us, it would look like someone turned on cheat codes for reality. Maybe one day, humans really will meet a magical civilization. We pull out our phones to take selfies. They pull out crystal balls to tell the future. We stare at each other in total confusion, and both sides think the exact same thing. Wow, these people are deeply unscientific. And that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. Making these videos takes a lot of work, so if you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and support the channel. I will see you in the next one.